so you can just leave it alone.
Okay.
All right, so my name's Tonya Macalino, and I write these two books, Spectre of Intention and Faces in the Water. I write urban fantasy thrillers, so basically there's a little bit of magic, but it's the regular world, and bad guys are out to get you. Basically. I was telling our steadfast listener here that I had always read the traditional questing novels, the Dragonlance, the big epic things. And then I got a hold of a Charlene Harris, and I was like, wow, you can do fantasy with romance, you can do fantasy with small town humor, you can do detective stories inside of it, you can do everything. And so I kind of changed my path a lot, kind of dropped a lot of the rules for me, and I decided to try throwing in the kitchen sink and see what happened. And it was a little bit of a surprise what came out of the pot. I was surprised to hear reader reactions, because most of them were very surprised at what they ended up reading. My stuff's a little bit scary. So I'm going to give you, since we were supposed to do Halloween readings and we were supposed to be scaring you, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a scary scene from my book. So in Faces in the Water, which is my series, Spectre is a standalone. She is basically trapped in a quarantine that's in the flooded ruins of Venice, and she is being hunted down by these creatures that are a little more complicated, and you don't find out what they really are until books 2 and 3. But she has an AI implant in her head, so she has this kind of onboard computer, and she has an onboard medic. They both have to be fed on a regular basis, so these vitamins are very precious to her, especially in this particular environment where she doesn't have access to any more of them. So you'll hear them come up, and I don't think that there's anything weird or mysterious beyond that you won't follow.
It already has my interest.
All right. So she's in the big theater in the middle of Venice, and it's got that kind of balcony level, and then it's got the orchestra level, and there's the stage. But the stage is all flooded out. The orchestra level is mostly flooded out. So she has cut across the balcony, and she's headed to the men's room to slip out. It's the middle of the night, and the bad guys have found where she is, and they're kind of descending on her, and she's got to get out really fast. I'd reached the door to the men's room. I pushed through. Softly, I closed the door behind me. The floor was intact here, at least according to my gradually sharpening night vision. Exposed plumbing and wiring showed where the fixtures had once been. I kept to the edges of the room. The windows were intact. I shoved at one with everything I had. It raised just far enough for me to stick my head through the guillotine opening. I was directly across from another smaller building. It was so close, only about as far away as I was tall. Could I jump it? No. Yes. No. I pulled my head inside and turned in a circle. A beam from the ceiling, part of the frame from the bathroom stalls, no tools. The hooked end of a curtain rod, no rope, not even an extension cord. Come on! The curtain rod. It had serviced all 3 windows. It was long enough to reach. There was no way that thing would hold me. I picked it up. This was no tinfoil tube. God, it had some serious heft to it. And a slick of dust. I bobbled it. I snatched it out of the air before it could cling to the floor. Maybe it could hold me. Maybe I was fucked in the head. I dropped my pack in front of me. I dug into it, pulled out the 2 bottles of supplements, and transferred them to the thigh pockets of my cargo pants. I secured my blanket to the pack. Then I got my full body underneath that window and shoved. I got a handful more centimeters for my efforts. It would have to do. With all the racket I was making, I had to get out of here now before I didn't get out of here at all. Sliding the curtain rod along my hand to keep it quiet, I aimed toward a windowsill slightly lower than mine. The closer I got to my target, the more wildly the pole swung. I hung my whole body on the remaining length, trying to counterbalance it. It was going to be close. The metal scraped the plaster of the opposing wall. I braced myself against the windowsill and swung with everything I had. The other end cleared the windowsill. I shoved. It locked into place on the other against the window frame. I rolled my end to the corner of the windowsill and whimpered. I had 8 centimeters of play. I heard the crunch of glass. No, I could not possibly be hearing the crunch of glass all the way in here. I wiped the sweat from my face with the back of my sleeve and dried my palms on my pants. Calm it down. I snatched up my pack and burrowed it and the front half of my body out the window. I reared back and shot-putted it through the window on the opposite side of the canal. It cleared. I drooped with a moment of relief. Then it was time to get the rest of me out on the window ledge. I turned around and wiggled myself out backward. Hanging on to the window frame, I swung my legs over the side. I gave the rod a test yank. The hold was firm, but I knew it was bowing. But I knew that it was the bowing when I reached the center that I had to be worried about. I wiped my hands down one last time. Then I transferred my weight. My body dangled over at least 2 stories of nothingness. Water rippled in the canal below. The wind wrapped a lock of my ponytail around my forehead. Oh God, this was a bad idea. I remember the giant woman from the balcony. I remember the animal-like businessman from the roof. I took a deep breath. Move now. I slid one hand out in front of me. Together, apart, together, apart. I kept my hand placement as wide as I dared. It was so close. No slipping, no slipping. I reached the middle. Together, I heard the metal grind behind me, felt the abrupt sag. Apart, apart, apart. Only a meter left to go. The pole popped behind me. I reached the windowsill. I hooked my fingers around the window frame, praying there was no glass left in it. I wasn't that lucky. Something pressed easily into the palm of my hand. I pulled my weight up onto the ledge, hooked my right foot around on the corner, and then worked the rest of my body up and over. I pulled my hand free from the glass, let myself drop to the floor. The thing about cuts like these is you don't feel them for a few minutes. I had to take advantage of every second of that time. I grabbed my pack, opened the straps, and secured it around me. I took a couple blows to release the curtain rod from the windowsill. Using the wooden window frame to muffle the noise, I reeled it in. The smears of black blood grew larger and larger as I worked. I tucked the rod out of view. I took a steadying breath. My time was almost up on the signal delay from the slice. I pressed my thumb to the cut and took off at a cautious clip across the room. Mo, get Margie to work on this. I'll pop some supplements as soon as I find a stopping place. The former apartment I found myself in was in better shape than the theater. I passed a bathroom that still had a tub in it, a kitchen with the cabinet doors still intact. I had to unlock the door to get out into the hallway. My face scrunched involuntarily as Margie's little bots got to work on my hand. I needed antiseptic for this thing. The best I could hope for was that the bleeding was cleaning it out. I wasn't exactly going to pour sports drink over it. Without windows for moonlight, the hallway was deeply dark, but my eyes were catching up to the night enough for basic maneuvering. The pills in my pockets jangled while I walked. My nerves jangled with them. Why didn't I just blast a horn to let the whole damn city know I was here? But I was too scared to stop. Just a little further and I would be far enough away. Then I'd take a batch and I'd put them in my backpack, just a little further. My head snapped back. Warm pain spread from my left eyebrow and my cheekbone. Tears streamed from my eye. I reached out with my good hand. I'd walked right into an open door. If I swung my head side to side, I could just barely make the outline. Shit. I dabbed at the tears with the sleeve of my t-shirt. The next steps I took were cautious and probing. My breathing grew jerky. No, none of that, I whispered to myself. No tears, no meltdown. Wall. I sniffed back the threatening waterworks and tried to force my eyes to see what was in front of me. A small oval of gray shone at thigh level. I crouched down. A moonlit floor was all I could make out. I measured the hole with my outstretched arms. I should fit. I pulled my pack off and pushed it through ahead of me. The wall was at least twice as thick as my forearm was long, probably the walls of 2 adjacent buildings. I reassembled myself on the other side. There was more light on this side of the wall, but that would change when those clouds hit the moon. More light meant more caution was necessary as the light was coming through a dilapidated roof. On my 3rd step into the room, I hit a soft spot. I used rocking test steps to find my way around it. Finally, I made it to the hall. This must have been an office. Doors and doorways lined the corridor. I hurried down the length of it. I saw another knocked-out tunnel on the other end. On the other side, I would stop, I promised myself. I would find a secluded corner to hole up for the night. I would take my supplements so Margie could stop the achy leaching from my body and start healing things properly. Without missing a step, I burrowed my way to the next building. A hotel, maybe? My eyes were drawn down the row to the doorway with the most light. There, I could rest there, put myself back together. I pulled off the pack as I strode into the room. A huge window pulled light from an already partially eclipsed moon. The room had a table, the remains of a chair, and a carrier. Oh, shit. The woman was curled over her knees, rocking steadily back and forth. I froze. She raised her head. I knew her. My vacant brain grasped after the memory, the cute little blonde from Victoria's grocery store. She looked just as shocked as I felt. No, she whispered, not here, not... She began panting through gritted teeth. Her eyes squeezed shut, but not before I saw her normal eyes. Perfectly normal, haunted eyes. I took a step back, reaching for my bag. No, don't run. I stopped mid-reach, but kept my crouch. She was fighting it. Mateo had fought it. I got the shit beat out of me. She hissed, you, Hadria wants you. Oh, God, she wants you bad. Hadria? The woman shivered. You should have stayed with Jurgen. Now everyone she's gotten her claws into. She's ripped out their minds. They hunt you. You poor idiot. Her head snapped forward, rammed into her knees. God, I can't. Can I help? Shh! Her breathing became shrill. She was losing. Shit. Don't run. That was the rule for facing predators. Don't run. The high-pitched intake of air stopped. The air around me relaxed, darkened. The girl unfolded fluidly to perch on her fingertips and toes. She turned her face to me. Through a mass of fair hair, I watched her pupils expand, obliterating those pale irises, wiping out the whites of her eyes. Her eyes became the night sky, fathomless, glittering. Anger twisted her features into a snarl. It should have been ineffectual on that gentle face, packed into that small, soft body. Instead, it stopped my heart. The rain clouds finally consumed the moon. I kept my eyes on the shadow that was left of her. Slowly, I straightened. The girl began circling. Moving as little as possible, I kept myself facing her, hoping she would circle her way to the door and bolt. Her loose, cross-stepped prowl slid her up to the door, then past it. Damn. She was getting closer. I wasn't just going to stand here and get jumped. I took a test step toward the door. She stopped, bristled. Not good. I glanced towards the exit, my 5th or 6th calculated risk of the night. Could I make it to the door and slam it in her face before she got me? I took another step. She matched me. I took another step. She hissed and followed. I ran. She slammed into me, knocked me to the floor. The moment we hit, she sprang off me, grabbed my arm, and I went flying. I hit the wall with my shoulder and punched through the old drywall. As I pulled myself out of the dent, I saw her toss her head back. The growl started so deep it rattled my bones. She was going to tell the whole fucking city where I was. I tackled her. We went down. Her claws sank into my ribs. Her tiny teeth pierced my shoulder. She tossed me up and over, landed on top of me. I fought to break her grip. Knees and elbows had no effect on her. I finally got my nails dug into her ear. I yanked. That got her attention. She reared up and punched me in the jaw. My body went slack. My senses flickered. I felt the ring on my finger smack the floor. The ring then had found the stinger. I saw her raise her fist again. I dug my thumbnail into the back of the ring to activate it. I rolled my head to dodge her blow, snaked my arm through, and jammed the stinger into her ribcage right above her heart. The girl released me, clawed at her t-shirt, blinked once. Then she collapsed on top of me. I deactivated the ring with my thumbnail. Now I was the one breathing shrilly. I'd had the wind knocked out of me, and the girl was a deadweight on my chest. My hands were loose as I tried to get a hold of her to roll her off of me. Finally, with a twist of my torso, she tumbled away. Her cloud of feather-soft hair swept over my face as she fell. It smelled of lavender and roses. My hands started shaking. I curled into a ball next to her. Lavender and roses. I jammed the heel of my palm into my mouth and muffled my own sobs. Does anybody have any questions?
No.
My series is set in Venice. My standalone is set on the platform for a space elevator because it's a good place to be trapped with bad guys. You can't leave. You're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.